Please check out our sponsors NordVPN for the best in online security. It's the best VPN on the market, and you can try it risk-free now with a 30-day money-back guarantee by visiting nordvpn.com/heartandhand. That's nordvpn.com/heartandhand, and it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Hello everyone, my name is David Edgar and I am the host of Heart and Hand Rangers podcast, and welcome to a special show because remarkably and laughably this is the first league game of the season where we can talk about a victory. Yes, the last week in September, and I'm delighted to be joined here for this by Adam Thornton. Hello Adam.
Hi, yeah, true Rangers fashion, they left it until the very last minute to even get the first victory of the season. But yes, a victory is a victory at this stage, absolutely.
Yes, and we'll reflect on the positive sides of the result, and I'm sure that the manager, Russell Martin, or the head coach rather, will be hoping that this is in fact a turning point for him. And things will pick up from here, but might as well talk about it straight away. Adam, the reaction to the goal suggested that won't be the case, that it's going to take a long time for the Rangers support to warm to Russell Martin, if ever.
Yeah, I think you could probably have made an argument that was the case in pre-season. Never mind where we are just now. Yeah, that's if the impossible does happen and this turns around into what the manager was at pains to stress it would be in pre-season. That would be unprecedented completely, but I can't remember that even at Rangers. I can't remember that anywhere else. To be honest, such a huge turnaround happening. Fair enough to get back to winning games. Ugly. That's one thing, but turning it around to a point where they're genuine title contenders, genuine top two contenders at this stage. Seems very, very far-fetched, and if he was able to do that from this position, it's going to be interesting to see how quickly fans turn back, if they will. But I think it's all hypothetical, really, isn't it? I'm not sure we're witnessing the start of that right now, as unlikely as it seems, regardless.
Yeah, it's not going to turn in the short term. That's just absolutely guaranteed. By short term, I mean a few months. I just don't see that happening. It's not impossible, because obviously if Rangers were to go on a winning run now and just constantly win matches from now till after Christmas, then attitudes would change and soften. But long way back. But Rangers headed down to Livingston yesterday, and I've given up trying to learn the name of the Livingston Stadium anymore. I just call it Almondvale because they change it every year. And I just, you get to a certain age, and I think that the mind is a bit like a hard drive. It fills up. And now to take that piece of information in, I have to lose another piece of information that I already have stored, and it just seems too much hassle, considering it'll only be changed next year. But they have a new plastic pitch, which still doesn't play true. Isn't as bad as the last one, I think, is the consensus. But should we really be in a top division having pitches where you go, well, it's not as bad as the old one was? Or should we maybe think about, because there were a few times yesterday, and it does favour Livingston, of course it does, where they read the bounce better than Rangers players did, because it's not a true bounce, and you can even see that in the ground. You can see it on television.
Yeah, I think it's a known issue for years. You're right. I remember going back there under Gerrard, and you could see little black. It's almost like little black balls or pellets jumping up from the surface. It's not my initial reaction when I seen it. That was the first I've seen it live on TV yesterday. Was I thought it looked a lot better in terms of the visual appeal. It actually looked green as opposed to
that weird plasticky
thing. Yeah,
I always thought it looked like. Have you ever had one of those fake Christmas trees? Not like obviously the real one. See, when you flatten it down to put it in the box, that's what that pitch looked like.
Where you can see each individual fibre or fake leaf. Yeah. And I think you're right. We're absolutely not going to be blaming the pitch on Rangers' second half performance.
No, we've been shite on grass for a while.
Yeah, I think it's natural. just judging the bounce, like you said, having a game plan which is, I guess, to spoil. Mostly, I think in Livingston's case, I don't think that's unfair to say. They are trying to play a little bit more football, but coming up as one of the promoted teams, it will be that. So it's probably going to suit them more that they can judge the bounce for clearances, even set pieces, all that sort of stuff. And I think it's going to be an advantage for them. The plastic pitch debate has been done to death. There are more of them now, I think, than there have ever been potentially in the league. So it's something I'm expecting to hear loads about. But yeah, I don't think it was a huge factor yesterday.
We got off to a traditional slow start yesterday for the opening 10 minutes or so, and Livingston made, I think, a very good save, a very good chance for Stevie May that Jack Butland had a very decent save from, and then they had a couple of other efforts early on. And I just want to read to you something. It's not about Rangers, but it's about what at times feels like our spirit animal, Manchester United, by Barney Roney discussing them. And he says, it's obvious watching this team why they start badly. The players begin each game looking like they're in a state of buffering, regurgitating information, remember patterns and shapes, unable to engage emotionally with the game or with what their opponents are actually doing. And that sort of resonated with me, Adam, because Rangers often, I think, look like that, where they go out and they are not in the moment. Is that probably the phrase I'm looking for there? I think that it does often look to me, and clearly it's the thing in modern football, that it's players who are trying to remember, right, am I supposed to be here? Am I supposed to be up there? Am I, what's the plan here? And there's nothing sort of organic or natural about it. And Rangers, they just always seem to start like this.
They do, and obviously those Man United parallels don't just start and end with Amarim and Russell Martin, unfortunately, over the last, 40 years, I think we're at now. There was something on, I didn't catch the Man United game, just to go off on a slight tangent. I didn't catch the Man United game. I was at a wedding, but I caught Match of the Day, and Mika Richards was talking about them post-match. I don't have the exact combinations to hand, but it was basically at some point during the game, Brian Mbeumo got moved to right wing back, which I think he's played at Brentford a little bit. But they had Mason Mount on as one of the two 10s, and then like 5 minutes later after that switch, Mason Mount got moved to left wing back, and Zirkzee comes on as a 10. And I think that's kind of similar to what we see sometimes. I have to say, not since the Celtic game. I think it's largely been settled in terms of this new shape, and players roughly playing in the positions that they should do. But earlier in the season, we were seeing some ludicrous things happening. Remember, we had Tavernier playing at left back. We had Max Aarons cutting inside. We had obviously Nico Raskin playing that wider midfield role. We then had Gassama and Antman filling in at opposite wing backs, and just weird things happening to try and stick to a system that wasn't quite working. And I think that's what Amarim is doing as well. It's the system is his philosophy, basically. Here it is, but within that, there isn't really much structure. You think about all the players that they've played. Amad Diallo is a right wing back, and then it's Brian Mbeumo, and then it's this person coming in. There's no similarities in those players. It's literally just, this is the system I want to play, and I'm going to try and force players in randomly. I don't get that. I think that's a different thing. That's been too flexible with things, and not flexible enough with the overall shape. So I don't think you could say that Russell Martin hasn't learned from his mistakes. Might be a bit too much, but he has certainly changed things over the last month or so, in terms of being a bit more settled, a bit more cautious, potentially. Not quite shoring up the defence, as that stat yesterday. What was it? The last clean sheet in the league, away in the league, was 8th of December last year, which goes to show it's not all his fault. I guess that's quite a lot of time for Clement and Barry Ferguson. But yeah, that was just an interesting comparison, that in a way they're really not flexible, but then also they change too many things to try and not be flexible too. It's a bit of a strange one.
Yeah, on that kind of leads me back to my point that because I think this Rangers team looked as though it was trying to take on a lot of information at the start of the season unsuccessfully, But if you're changing stuff then rapidly to try and get something to work, is it a case of that it can lead to confusion because, oh, right, I'm supposed to be doing this. Actually, no, we've changed that now. I'm supposed to be doing that. And at times, I think this Rangers team looks almost burdened by a sense of, I'm trying to do what he's asking me to do. I'm just not 100% sure what that is.
Absolutely. And I think we spoke in the summer, didn't we? I don't think anybody wanted, Russell Martin wasn't anybody's first choice, but for me, I've been quite clear that playing attacking football, I think, is the way to win this league. You're going to have the ball regardless. I think it makes sense to be good with the ball. Now, that's not happened. And then when you factor in all of the other potential negatives, such as maybe personality clash, the fact that he's never really been able to set up a defence despite being a defender himself. We did wonder in the summer, would it have been more sensible to go with maybe more of an experienced or a pragmatic manager? I know we've just had one, but to give the wider football structure some time to implement a transfer strategy, which I'm sure we'll come on to, and almost just sort of have a bit of a bedding in period. Would never be allowed to call it a settling in season or anything like that, but just try and keep things basic while there's so many other things changing. That didn't happen, obviously, and it was brave to go all in basically on what you wanted to be from the start without really having the foundations there. But now I think we're seeing that getting stripped back, and I guess there's two sides to that. To your point, the players had to take on so much information during pre-season and the first few weeks of the season that it has now been stripped back quite a bit, I think. So that can probably cause confusion as what did I learn during pre-season? Well, I've not to do that now. I have to strip it back and just keep it simple. Again, with complete hindsight and not based in reality, maybe it would have been a better idea to start with what we've got just now. Get everyone used to the first, 5, 6, 8 games of the league season with a sort of basic 4-man defence to sort of deeper midfielders, a kind of front, a 3 behind a target man. Maybe that would have been an idea to start with, and then start to add in some of the more complicated, shall we say, or some of the more creative things to try and unlock the top of the pitch. So going from 0 to 100 right away and it completely collapsing, I kind of don't blame anyone for then trying to be a bit more cautious, but then equally I don't blame the players for being confused because it's pretty different to what they obviously spent the whole summer hearing about.
Yep, and I think that you saw that again in the opening 10 minutes. As I say, just that phrase or that little paragraph resonated with me because I think Rangers do look at that time. And Livy, as teams will do, Adam, against a struggling side, we're going for it. They weren't just sitting in. They knew they could get at us. And obviously, in their stadium, it's 3/4 Rangers fans. So, you can turn the crowd to your advantage in that game. But Rangers did settle in after about 10 minutes or so, began to get a grip in the middle of the park, where, of course, games tend to be won or lost. And there was some good stuff in that first half and led to a real quality goal. Gassama, who continues to be, I think, at times our only, but certainly our best attacking outlet. He got to the byline, whipped over a cross. It was a wee bit overhit, but then Oliver Antman that's where you should be if you're the winger on the other side, right? If he's going out, if he's wide, you get in at the back post. He does really well to not just get the ball back across, but to control it. It's easy to just welly that one. It goes out for a throw in. But what a finish, James Tavernier. I mean, absolutely superb. The way he's just adapted quickly, overhead, controlled, roof of the net. Really fabulous finish.
Yeah, and he's changed his role again. I think that's potentially the third time that he's been changed this season. I think Russell Martin said that was it the last game? He tweaked it, and I think you've seen that again. He's now finding himself in positions that he probably hasn't since maybe the Europa League run. Remember, he was popping up as a centre forward at times back then. So we'll see how long that lasts. I think he isn't the player that he was. I think that's safe to say. The amount of miles on the clock is never going to be the case. I had thought that this season we might have seen him more as a third centre half type, still playing it right back, but third centre half type at times. But it doesn't seem to be the case. Certainly yesterday, he was more advanced than Magoma. He tucks in Tavernier. Magoma was frequently part of the back three when we're building up, which again is a bit of a strange one, given he seems to be someone who is more of an attacking fullback than a defensive one. But yeah, for this goal, we have to say it works because Tavernier gets in the box, which is something that we're badly lacking in general. I think we can see that by the number of chances that we're creating, the number of goals that we're scoring. So by all means, if someone can get into the box and find themselves free, then yeah, we're not going to argue. And it was a nice move. The two wingers I like. I think I'm on record from the summer saying I still think we needed a bit more there. I do like both of them. Gassama is kind of what we thought he would be. He's a guy that will take men on. He can he can shoot, he can finish. He's maybe not great at the kind of final pass type situation, and I think on the other side, Antman is probably the opposite. I'm not sure he really suits the coming deep, slow build up type situations, but we did see quite a few occasions where there was some combinations in midfield, and we were a bit quicker at getting the ball forwards, and we've seen Antman a little being able to go 1v1. Same with Gassama. So yeah, I do like both of them. I think Gassama's obviously the one who's going to shoot and hopefully get some goals. Antman isn't taking a lot of shots at all. It could be because he is a little bit deeper than we would like him to be, but his sort of underlying creative numbers are decent. I think that's his first assist in the league, albeit he's not even played a full 90 minutes. I think he's played one full 90 minutes, sorry, the Dundee game, but he's not played a full 90 minutes since Pilsen away, I think it was, or certainly more than what he got yesterday, which was about 70 odds. So he's been a little bit stop-start coming back in, but I think based on what we've seen just now, I'd much prefer to be playing Antman on that side than Mikey Moore just now, and get Antman into the team fully settled, because I do think he can put up some good creative numbers, which we badly need in the final third.
Yeah, there was the thing I like about him, and he is quieter and less explosive, I think, than Gassama potentially is, right? And less maybe eye catching. And at times you get a little bit frustrated from him because he doesn't really go on the outside. He tends to want to come in. But what he's very good at is he doesn't tend to waste balls or put balls into quote unquote dangerous areas. He tends to find his man, which I think is a pretty decent skill for a wide man. And there was one in the second half in particular where he's got the ball wide and he's sort of delaying and you're shouting at him. But then he finds a gap and he slides it through. And what happens is actually Asgard and Raskin get in each other's way. But it was a very presentable chance that he'd manufactured. And I thought that's what he does. You know, he's got that ability to spot the pass and then execute it. We need to get him into those positions, though, as you mentioned. If he's very deep, then he's not going to be able to do that. We need to get him up further up the park, and I think he needs to impose himself on games a bit more. You know, I think you can tell players' personalities can sometimes shine through on the park, and I think he does need to impose himself a bit more. But hopefully that will come with more game time. Handed a really good opportunity to score a second, and that was from the penalty spot after May pulled down Nico Raskin at a corner. Now, seen some chat about this, Adam. Does Raskin make a meal of it? Yes, in terms of, it's not a dive though, but what he does is he goes down because otherwise you don't get them. And when people complain about this, my argument is always, when players try to stay in their feet, referees don't give it. They very rarely do. When a player gets a kick in the box and he tries very hard to stay on his feet, even though it has affected him, he will not get the penalty kick, right? So players have to do it to, if you like, draw attention to the referee. I have no sympathy whatsoever in the VAR era for modern footballers who pull shots. Because it's clearly a foul. Raskin's running to try and get his head on the ball and you're grabbing at his shirt. It's a foul, it's a penalty, and whether or not Raskin does go down to make, so the referee can spot it or not, there's a simple way around that. If you're not pulling his shirt and he does that, he'll get booked. So it's entirely, as far as I'm concerned, on the player who chooses to do it rather than defend properly, and it's a penalty kick, end of story.
Yeah, I think it's the consistency thing, isn't it? Again, we've seen it in the Premier League this week, things that are getting pulled back for VAR or getting given that aren't getting given in other weeks. I agree with you. I think any shirt pull like that impedes a player, and and stops them making a run, even if they don't go down, that should be a penalty in my opinion, because you're impeding someone illegally, if you like. So I agree with it, and yeah, I don't have any issue with going down. It's this binary world, isn't it? If a player goes down because they've been challenged when they could have stayed up, then they're a diver. But yeah, if they then try and stay up, they don't get the penalty. And even though everyone agrees that it's a foul, so yeah, I agree. I think that was absolutely was a foul, and I think pretty much every one of those should be. We've certainly suffered with those before. Pulls that maybe don't even take the attacker off their stride. We've had penalties against us before, so I think that needs to be cleared up. That any short pull. It was for a bit. I'm sure. I think we got one. We got given a couple, didn't we? Maybe one at Parkhead, Catties, potentially. Yeah. But yeah, it's just not consistent, which is the issue, and everyone points to VAR being not consistent, but again, the people using it aren't exactly being consistent with it either, so it's a bit of a flawed logic.
Yeah, totally. But unfortunately, James Tavernier, I get what he was thinking, right? In those circumstances, you had it down the middle, and I get that, right? Just no dicking about it. He thought, I'm going to put this one down the middle, and it's just a good save. He doesn't quite get the height on it, unfortunately. It's a good save, but I could really have done with that one going in for the old ticker.
I know, yeah. He usually puts him in the corner, doesn't he? But I kind of get the logic. It was one of those ones that he could have definitely. He has placed them miles better before in the past, but equally, it's the goalkeeper makes himself big, gets the legs out, and it's a decent save as well. And that would have been good. I think we deserved it on the
at that point,
on the balance of the first half. I wouldn't quite go as far as the manager, and well, the best we've played this season isn't exactly a high bar to be fair, but I did like some of it. I did like the variation. Like I said, people might go nuts at this, but I do think we're getting better at passing out from the back. I don't know what your thought is. There's less hearts in mouth situations. I think everybody would like it if it wasn't done as much as it is, but I do think we're getting better at it in the sense that less errors are coming from it. Certainly over the last 3 league games that I can remember, maybe 4. If you count the Hibs game, the 4 domestic games, I do think it's getting better. My issue with that is the next part of it. I don't think the midfield works. I don't think we've found something that works in there. The plan for the midfield, as we knew it in pre-season, was clearly Rothwell playing as a 6, and then Asgard, Diomande and Raskin potentially sharing those 2 sort of number 8s that would drift wide and create space, etc. And then, as we know, that all got abandoned. But I don't think we've solved that, and I think that is one of the biggest issues that we've got at the minute that's stopping us in terms of how we create chances, how we defend, all that sort of stuff. Yes, there's been lots of individual mistakes by defenders that have given away goals, but it's that old thing that we talk about all the time in terms of multiple points of failure. Where do things start? I don't think we do enough of a job in midfield of pressing well enough, which puts pressure on the defence. I don't think we do enough of a job of carrying the ball. I don't think we do enough. We certainly don't have anywhere near enough creativity and goal threat from the midfield. I don't think we've found the balance there. Asgard looks slow. He doesn't look fit at the minute. Again, similar to Rothwell, it's not the player that I watched last year in the Championship or in League One. So that isn't ideal from a sort of scouting point of view. He doesn't look like that player. Equally, I would say we're not setting up to get the best chance of success. He spent most of his time behind the ball yesterday, which isn't what he should be. He's someone who can carry the ball. He can win fouls. He can get himself forward, and he can have a shot. I've not seen much of it here. It feels like he needs to be same as everyone else. He needs to be 10, 15 yards up the pitch. We said the same for the wingers. So yeah, that the balance in midfield isn't quite there for me. That's the platform that we need. If we're not able to, I think Raskin and Barron do a really, really good job of winning the ball back at times, and Raskin is the best overall midfielder that we have. I think that's probably stating the obvious. So he should play, but it's then how we get the combinations round about him. We don't have that number 6 that we desperately needed, to someone who can do it all, who can be the ball winner, but can also be the man that carries the ball forward. He's physically imposing, can pass through the lines. We don't have that guy. That's a gap that we maybe, I guess, hoped that we could. What's that Moneyball term that we could deliver in the aggregate, or I don't know what it is, something like that. But by combination of the skills that we've got, we hope we'd have enough to do that. I don't think we do. I don't think Diamandi. He's not doing much really, other than fouling terribly. I think in the last few games he does okay at winning the ball back at times, but when he's got the ball, I think he's very, very slack. The only other player actually that I think has looked like they could be suited to doing what we need to do in the midfield consistently, and it was only a couple of games, is Lyle Cameron. Those couple of games that he played, I thought, okay, he can understand where space is, he can move, he's good on the ball, he's pretty slight physically, but he can get himself about, and he's got an eye for goal. He's obviously been injured. Maybe him coming back into this might inject something, but yeah, I think that I would go as far as to say that, yeah, certainly going forwards, the midfield is the part that I don't think we've quite cracked yet. They're not. I think the manager would say that himself. He's not quite found the combination in there that can defend, pick up the ball, get forward, contribute to attacks, which is hampering the front three.
Yeah, it's almost like we should have signed the number 6.
Yes, exactly. That would have been nice.
That would have been helpful. Yeah, but here's my problem with that, with the pass out from the back. And I agree with you from the defence point of view, and where it falls down, you're right, is that when it goes into the midfield, they are far too quick. Their initial option is 9 times out of 10, they just pass it back away.
Yeah.
We need, when it goes in there, that's the defensive worked you a bit of space. You need to take the ball in the half turn and then go. Too often, our players automatically just return it or play it to another defender. They play it back, and that's where it continually falls down for me, because you end up playing a lot of the game in that, if you like, the second half of our half, the second quarter of the pitch. You end up playing a lot of football there, because you're not even attempting to get, and that's when people talk about playing on the half turn. You need to take the ball in midfield, receive it, and go with it forward, and far too often we don't. And of course that slows it down, it frustrates the supporters, and it is easier to defend against. I thought we'd maybe got that crucial second just before half time. Derek Cornelius getting on the end of one, but it hit his arm. I was going to say he handled it, he didn't, but it did hit his arm. And the rule is that if you do that and you're then the player who then directly scores, then it's a foul. It's a weird one, because if it hit his arm and bounced to someone and they put it in, it's not a foul, which kind of shows you
isn't it?
Yeah, the lack of logic in that particular rule. However, he was offside anyway, and he was, by the way, he is, daylight offside. So it wouldn't be given anyway.
Quite like him, I quite. I'm probably going to say this, and he's going to have a howler on Thursday, such as my record recently with these things. But I quite like him. I think he can use the ball well. There was 1 or 2 moments I thought he maybe Livingston got the better of him physically. But I think he's been okay. I guess it speaks to recruitment, whereby you would probably be expecting him. No offence to John Suter, but you'd probably be expecting Cornelius to be partner in either the 10 million Wolves loanee or Manny Fernandez, who isn't even making squads anymore.
No,
the amount of money that we spent on him, which was pretty baffling at the time. I think we were all sort of the opinion that if we're signing someone like that from Peterborough, who wasn't Peterborough's best player, and fans were a little bit confused about it, we would be expecting the fee to be something like 1.5 million max. Never mind more than double that. But the fact that he's not making games now, at the end of, not making squads now at the end of September is a bit worrying. So yeah, I think Cornelius, I think he looks good. I think the expectation certainly would be for me is to see him with one of the other two, and see how he does. But I think early signs he's not been terrible, which is just about the bar for Rangers just now. But yeah, I do think he's a player that I think we hopefully will have a good season for us.
Yeah, definitely. And then Adam, my pet hate, got ourselves into a good position. We're 1 up, should be more, but we're dominant. Go on then, win this game early in the second half, another goal will do it. Rangers just do not come out, and I'm sick of this. Absolutely sick of this, because this is constant. On the rare occasions we do have a good first half, this is what we do. This is exactly what happened at Motherwell early in the season. Rangers come out, they're sluggish. They stop playing with any of the zipping intensity that we saw in the last 20 minutes of the first half. it's almost like they think they've got the job done. And of course, Livy, who are a wee bit cautious at the start of the second half because they're waiting on this onslaught and they've had a bit of a chasing, they begin to go, oh, okay, hold on, we're getting back into this. And then they start to dominate. And during that period of domination, they score a goal because of all the stuff I've just mentioned there. Sloppiness, Rangers are switched off at a throw-in. They allow a 2-on-1. They allow time to deliver a ball. And look, by the way, we can talk about the quality levels of the opposition, but any professional player, if you allow him time and space to pick a ball, the chances are he'll pick a fairly decent one. He does. It's a great ball in. Suter gets caught under it, as he does a lot. And boom, it's 1-1. And it was so avoidable, but so predictable, and it drives me up the wall.
Yeah, it's again not a new thing that we turn in Jekyll and Hyde halves if we're going to be kind. But yeah, I think that one is that's basic. That really annoys me because letting yourself get an overload like that before the ball even comes in is basic. As I said, I was going to say you can excuse the when the ball comes into the box because it is a good ball, but watching it back, you really can't.
He's far too much time. He's standing there and he's time to look up, measure it, and put a ball in. And, like I say, we can talk about, it's Livingston. These guys are far better footballers than any of us, right? And I'd be fairly confident still at my age in my ability to pick out a good ball if nobody's in front of me. It's a nonsense. It really is. But to me, it's endemic of the whole attitude that gripped the team since the start of the second half. Well, they've come out and it's almost like they're like, okay, well, we don't need to do that stuff that we were doing that was working. And we were barely in the Livingston half in the second half. Up until they equalise. We're quite content just to be playing this anemic, knocking it about, not really going anywhere football, no intensity or drive, and boom, you get punished.
And losing goals from set pieces always annoys me more because
you should be set.
They're binary. It's binary situations. You don't have to be the best team or the best player in the world to score from a set piece or defend from a set piece. It's all about organisation. It's all about where's your man and who's dealing with him, who's passing them on, all that sort of stuff. So it is why they can be such a leveler, I guess. But equally, if we switch off and that ball gets to Montgomery and he's putting the ball into the box, that's absolutely fine. Where the centre halves are in relation to where the guy who scores the goal is they've just been they can't be taken out of the game that easily. I don't think, and I think we've seen it all too often. We are really, really incapable of winning physical battles on the ground. To be fair, as well as on the deck at the back, we should be better than the opposition in physical contests because we can afford to buy in better players, more physical players. But for whatever reason, there's a catalogue of centre halves that we've got that just seem to switch off, just aren't capable over the last 10 years or so. And yeah, it's not good enough. So that's one of those things that should be easily avoidable. But overall, in that second half, yeah, I totally agree. It's almost like the defence sat back, and then and the midfield
all came back,
and an attack they were just too cautious and in disarray. And then later on in the game, again, you could argue when tactics get thrown out the window, we managed to get something, and that's great. But on plenty of other days, we've done that situation, and we've not only not got something, but we've been hit by a sucker punch and actually lost the game. So no, I don't think the second half was great at all. The manager mentioned about the sort of lack of passes. Again, that seems a little bit binary because you have to win the ball back and then keep the ball if that's what you want to do. Just because you can't just say, "Oh, Livingston had more of the ball than us. Go and get the ball."
There's a reason for that. Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason that Livingston had more. They wanted it more.
Yeah, and I think that's a fear thing. I think that probably comes down to the situation more than tactics, maybe more than individual players. I think that comes down to the situation where they're scared to open up. I guess because probably should have been 2, certainly 3 up if you want to be kind in the first half, and maybe they don't have that. They're playing with fear a bit basically because of the situation they're in, because of the poor results, poor performances, etc. Maybe they just don't have those guys in the team that we've been speaking about for ages that can sort of drag them through games. And I think that comes down to just what we've mentioned there in terms of the midfield and in defence. We have some players that can do that now, but I just don't think we've got enough that can just corral the troops and say, fair enough, after half time, let's ride out 5 or 10 minutes, but then we get on the ball and we start playing our game again, and we start trying to make, playing our game in relative sense, of course, but we want to try and start making passes and try and get some attacking threat. That's the point I mentioned earlier on as well, that we can't create chances at all. And this is the challenge I think you've got with maybe someone like Majowski coming in, who it's fine to say he knows the league, but if you can't get the ball to him, it really doesn't matter what league he knows. If you're incapable of providing a player like Majowski with the chances, he is not a guy that is going to do what Egeman did last year and get the ball deep, nutmeg two men, and go and create chances themselves. He needs to be supplied in dangerous areas. You've seen with his pretty horrific sitter, but the movement, the flick, I think it was Raskin, wasn't it? That flicked the ball through. Those are the situations that you need to get him into. So I feel a little bit for him, but I think it comes back to the sort of wider point of, just because you know the league and you've played in Scotland and you've scored goals here doesn't mean you're a guarantee that you're going to just turn up and start smashing them in for Rangers. I fully expect him to, but for someone like Bojan Majowski, it needs to be because players are creating for him rather than him conjuring something out of nothing. If that doesn't happen, it really doesn't matter what league you've came from. We're not going to be able to score goals. So yeah, I think there's two sides of it. They know that they can't score enough goals, and they know they've been a little bit leaky at the back, and they've got a goal there, so they maybe just try to almost protect it and try and break forwards, and nothing really happened. Yeah.
No, it didn't. But then at that point, Russell Martin just chucks on all
Everybody.
the attackers. And actually, strangely, then it became, there was a lot more happening, and it was fairly simple. That suddenly Livingston couldn't sit in their shape and say, right, well, we know where the attacking threats are coming from here. We were less predictable because it was mental. Now, what that means, of course, is that you are open up to breaks, and Mays forced another good save. It was like a basketball match at this point. Both teams just chucking everybody forward. And Livingston were going for it. You know, they chucked on a striker in injury time themselves. They felt the game was there to be won, because it was one of these teams is going to get a goal. Who will it be? Because it was just complete madness. And thankfully, it was us in the last minute. So many players in the box. The ball thankfully drops to Max Aarons, and good finish, to be fair, from him. And I think you could see what it meant to him, to Russell Martin, because wild celebrations. And in the case of Aarons, the last time we haven't seen him since, was that, a red card so bad I found it offensive in Bruges. I took it as a personal insult. I think every Rangers fan did. So, it could be big for him, but I think it's a wee bit early to be writing the, turning point stories just yet.
Oh, completely agree. Yeah, I think you mentioned it there, but I think when Mikey Moore came on, or when they all sort of came on, he was a little bit later, wasn't he? But Mikey Moore's shot in the 84th minute was, I think, our first shot of the second half.
It was since the 32nd.
So there you go. Over almost an hour of play sort of sums that up. I'm really not going to argue with a set piece goal. It was a nice flick on. You see Raskin again. I'd like us to. It's difficult, isn't it? I'd like us to make more of that. What he's got there, but again, you kind of don't want to be too one-dimensional with it, because teams will obviously cotton on to it. But he's providing a lot there in terms of the set pieces. He's becoming a real danger, I think, with those flick-ons, and he's involved obviously in that one. And like I said earlier on another day that doesn't fall to Max Aarons, and things change. On another day, Shankland's handball is a handball. On another day, Martin Boyle's handball isn't a handball. These sort of binary situations are things that tend to decide games and potentially decide careers as well. So I'm not going to argue when things go for us, but equally, I don't think what we've seen in that last 5 minutes is a strategy that is going to help us moving forwards consistently. But yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, we'll take it. And that's really all we can do at this point. The problems that we had are still there. The sense that in the manager we've got somebody who is on borrowed time, regardless of what the club seem to think, is still there. He's not somebody that I'm totally I admit I am totally in fact I am convinced that I was going to say I'm unconvinced. I'm not. I'm convinced that he won't turn it round. But he did win, and he's there for at least another week. Right then, folks, that will do us for today here on the flagship show. If you want to hear more from Heart and Hand, go to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Heart and Hand. If you prefer to get your content from YouTube, we are now there as well. You can sign up on YouTube and get all the podcasts, all the audio podcasts delivered to you through that medium as well. Cammy will be back on Friday with Heart and Hand Extra, in which he will go through what happens in Graz as Rangers play the second match of our Europa League group stage qualification ties. Adam, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, David.
It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and thanks to Mike Lee and Paul Myers, our producers. Thank you very much for listening, folks. We'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.